One. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. If you're on your way to work, if you just woke up, if you're about to go to bed, if you're getting a midnight snack, if you're taking a break because you and your partner just had an argument, or if you and your partner are listening together because it's date night, we're so glad that you are here wherever you are because you're family and we love you. And this is your daily connection to a group of people that are on the same path as you, whether you're looking or searching, and this is just some you kind of found us wandering on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or you're a regular listener, but we don't even know you. If you do listen regularly, please write us at info@buckleycenter.org. We want to hear your story. We want to connect with you, and we want to know that you're out there. Because we don't even really check the stats on this podcast regularly. There could be millions of people listening and we wouldn't know, or probably a couple. But either way, we're glad that you're here. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. Tuning in live from New York City. We have a live virtual Zoom studio audience, about a dozen people that tune in live with us, and we're so glad that you're here, plus all of you tuning in from podcast land. And my name is Dayal, and I'm here with Kishore Chandra, our tri-host at Chutagopi. Was having some internet troubles this morning. We're going to start a GoFundMe campaign soon to fix Achuta's internet troubles. It seems to happen regularly in her zone. But aside from that, Kishore and I are here. We're going to carry on the baton. And how are you doing? I think this is the first time you and me are on podcast together since coming back from India. Kishore was in India for several weeks with Achuta. Achuta came back first, and her and I connected. And then I had to step out for some busyness I had going on, and then Kishore stepped in, and now so the three of us have not been on podcast for like a month. Normally the three of us are here, so now it's me and Kishore. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. This weather has got me all over the place. Vata season, it's just like the fall. It's hot, it's cold, it's windy, it's rainy, it's all the things. So I'm
Yeah,
getting used to like the light. I woke up today and it was just dark. It was just darkness. And I was
yeah,
just, why is it like this?
yeah,
So
totally. My dog woke up in the middle of the night, and we have a bell on our door that he rings if he needs to go out, and every now and then he needs to go out in the middle of the night. And so he rang this bell on the door, and I heard it, and I got up and I took him out, and then we were coming back in, and I checked the clock. I was like, "What time?" Because it was like pitch dark, and I was like, I assumed it was like 1 in the morning, and I looked at it, was like 6 o'clock, and I was like, "What? Why is it already time to get up? Like it seems it should be 1 in the morning." Um, and so yeah, we've entered the dark times. At least here in New York. Kimberly's like, it's beautiful outside right now. I live in California. She's shaking her head no. They have a couple days of gloomy weather a year. Um, Kimberly said it's dark, and then I won't repeat afterwards. Pasha is dark in Seattle. I mentioned that in our fundraiser presentation. I just let people do it. Baldavia, I also saw it as very dark despite not chanting time yet, not falling back yet, changing time yet. Achyuta, good morning. Hare Krishna. We're just talking about how miserable the world is and how dark the times have gotten. And so welcome.
I saw that typo and I was like, it's a dark AG. I was like, there's a dark me? I was like, who's the there's a shadow me? I was like, who's the shadow me? I was like, what?
We're talking about your favorite thing of waking up early and it's already dark and the sun setting at 4 p.m.
Uh, yeah, I that makes me want to move somewhere, anywhere.
Anywhere. We're just catching up. We hadn't started yet, and I was asking Kishore how he's doing, and he was saying how the weather is bringing up all kinds of stuff because it's dark and it's you wake up and it's dark, and we're in New York and it's kind of we're getting there.
I mean, yeah, it's only gonna get more intense this week. I mean, I'm like slightly hoarse. I don't even know what from, but yeah,
When do
there's
we
a
change clocks? Are we changing clocks? Did we already change clock? Are we on time?
no, no. We didn't
Are we
change
on the
yet.
wrong
We'll
time?
change.
I thought that like changing clocks is not a thing anymore. I thought they like made
It
a
didn't
law.
get passed by the state.
Do different states pass it?
No. As in, like, the representative's house.
Okay. So it still is
So
a thing.
yeah, it will be a thing this year. We change, I think, November 6th, that Sunday. So
Okay.
unfortunately, this year we will change. But in the future, hopefully, we will not change.
I think we should just keep setting the clocks back. Just keep saving time.
Oh my God, that depresses me so much. The more we move the clocks back, it's like the sun's gonna set at noon. I'm just gonna wither away to nothing.
Quick, get up and have breakfast before the sun goes down.
I'm gonna slowly dissolve.
Yeah.
Although, if the sun set at noon, I feel like Muslims would like it during Ramadan.
There you go. You break your fast early. We start having Thursday night kirtan at 8 a.m. All right. Pasha says she loves where things are going today, and that's great because we have no idea where we're going. George Harrison wrote that song. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, and that's sort of the thesis of this podcast. But we actually do have a place that we go. We go to the Bhagavad Gita. We read from the Bhagavad Gita. I have not been here for the last few days. It's Monday. It's a new week. The three of us have not been together for like a month. Chuta and I were on, and then Kishore and Chuta were on, and then just Kishore and I were on for 2 minutes, and now the three of us are here. So you guys are gonna have to lead the way in terms of where we left off.
We left off with the symptoms of a self-realized person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it anything like how we've been discussing the last 10 minutes?
No.
Are we displaying any of those symptoms?
They realize that the material world is futile, and then they just wither away.
And then do they change their clocks? Do self-realized people change their clocks, and which way do they change them?
I'd say closer to Krishna.
Closer to Krishna. Okay.
Can you imagine? Just like when we went to Radha Gopinath, we went to see Radha Gopinath in Jaipur, and he opened, and he was in his pajamas, and he looks stunning, but he always wears this big gold watch. He's got his flute.
Got some bling. He's got some bling.
It's a big old watch. I was like,
That's how they do
gotta
it
know
in
what time of
Jaipur.
day it is.
That's how they do it in
He's got
Jaipur.
important things to do.
Yeah. Okay.
When we were at Radha Gopinath temple, Achyuta Gopi saw me in my in my like saddest form because I thought we had missed the darshan. And I arrived there and I just like gave up. I was just like, nah, nothing means anything anymore. I got to the temple.
Started giving up on the rickshaw ride there. He was like, we are not gonna actually, this is a good one to save for the actual podcast. Good story for the podcast. But
Yeah.
This podcast brought to you by Rolex.
We don't do this.
Okay, so this is the podcast, by the way, Chuta. We're rolling. By the way, we are live. Just letting you know.
Wow.
This is what our listeners are getting today. This is what they're getting today. This is their spiritual connection. This is their tribe.
That's all you've got.
Those that are still here. They're like, you got to tune into this podcast. It's this amazing spiritual discussion of the Bhagavad Gita. It's okay. I'm going to tune in on Monday. And they're just like, where's this going, Pasha? Why did you invite me to this?
I think people appreciate realism.
Is that Picasso?
No, that's Cubism.
That's Cubism. I don't appreciate either.
Oh, Krishna. Wait, okay, I'm gonna do it and turn it.
Kishore's gonna put us back into
I'm gonna put us back on track.
realism.
I saw where Chuta was going with the Radha Gopinath story, because I think it was really interesting. You know, we left off in this 254 where Arjuna kind of wants to know. We've been going through the whole second chapter of the Gita, and now we're kind of at this place where Arjuna is asking Krishna, like, what does this person who is self-realized like look like? What are their symptoms? How do they walk? How do they speak? How do they sit? And we'll get into those questions a little bit more, because Krishna gives very, very specific answers to that. But one of the things is, one of the answers, which we'll get into, is kind of just like being satisfied with Krishna, like being satisfied with Krishna, and like trusting Krishna. And I remember when I was going to Radha Gopinath, and I was on the rickshaw with the Juta Gopi, I had like completely just like given up. I got like really dejected. I was just like really upset, actually. I was because I really wanted to see this deity. I really wanted to see this darshan. And I was just like, you know what? We missed it. It's over. I'm done. I'm done with this trip. I'm done with Jaipur. I'm just done. And like I was in the rickshaw, just like full on RBF, just like, don't talk to me, like I'm done. And when we got to the temple, I just got like sad because the doors were closed, and I was doing a parikram, or going around the temple, and I was just like dragging my feet, looking at the floor. I was just like, I'm over it. I'm done with this. And I just like let it consume me. Even though it was a good attachment, it was an attachment for the deity, but it was more an attachment of like how I wanted it to go, of how I thought it was supposed to go. And then Achuta kind of catches me. Well, she was kind of trying to encourage me the whole time. She was like, no, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I was just like, what do you mean it's gonna happen? We're here and the doors are closed. Like, it's not gonna happen. And then like Achuta's like, look, there's some weird schedule over there in Hindi.
There's more timings on that
It has some
schedule.
strange
And he's like,
timings
what
on it.
chart? There's no chart. I was like, Kishore, look. I was like, there's a whole chalkboard of charts. Like, look, that like there's one that says like we're right here. If we just wait a second. And he's like, no, it's never gonna work. I was like, hold on a minute, friend. Let's just like what if? What if? And meanwhile, I'm like inside praying to Gopinath. I was like, Gopinath, don't you make me a liar. Like, I promised him that this is not what happens. Like, we're not going to give up and we're going to get your darshan. I was like, so now you've got to make something happen. Like, I can't just be making him hold on for nothing. And then somehow or other, bells started ringing.
Bells will be ringing. Oh, it's too early for that.
It was pretty amazing, actually. It made the miracle that much more alive because Kishore had felt so dejected. And so it's like you can feed somebody, but unless they're really, really hungry, it doesn't.
Twamakin should have goached him. Yes.
And so he felt so ready for that darshan. And then he felt so low because he thought he wasn't going to get that darshan. And then when those curtains opened, we scared all of the local people because we yelled so loudly. We were so happy to see God. And he was so handsome.
We literally shrieked. It was like a very high pitch.
They're like Western people are weird. We're just so excited. I love that story. Can I read? I love how first of all, as you were talking about Achyuta, that famous beautiful verse, one of the greatest verses from Bhagavatam is from Queen Kunti that talks about that God is easily approachable. The supreme absolute truth, divine relationship is available for all of us. But it's extra hard if one is intoxicated specifically with wealth, with beauty, with the feeling of being in a higher echelon of society, high family, or what's the fourth one? Wealth, beauty,
Education.
knowledge, this feeling of like intellectual superiority. Not that those things are necessarily negative or detrimental to spiritual life, but that if there's an intoxication of feeling like my spiritual life, like those things are the qualifiers of my spiritual life, or those things make me better than other people, then there's a dangerous sense of comfort we start to feel that creates a complacency rather than a sense of urgency towards seeking higher truth. And therefore the word used is twama kinchana gochram, that you belong to the materially impoverished. And not just like people who have less money than other people, but people who have recognized there's nothing left for me in this material world. Like it's an empty shell, that it's a false promise. And so why am I chewing the chew of seeking something that's just not there? And when we realize that it's not a pessimistic, it's a, I was actually listening to somebody speak to someone the other day, and he said expecting suffering in every moment in the material world is the greatest optimistic view you could ever have. And so because we start to expect the reality of the situation, and then we start to adjust accordingly, and we start to seek higher connection in the right places, that brings a proper sense of fulfillment. And so I just wanted to reference that verse, and then we can talk about that a little bit. I did want to segue into this verse that you were reading, Kishore, 254, and the purport, because I wanted to read the purport, because I don't know if you read it or not, but it was really, really beautiful, and I think pertinent in the context of the Gita that we've been reading thus far, and as we launch into this next and really kind of final section of the second chapter, which is one of the biggest chapters of the Gita.
Let's do it.
Should I just do that?
Yeah, let's read it.
Okay. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 54. The verse I'm just going to read, as you were referencing already, Kishore. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How do they speak, and what are their language? How does he sit, and how do they walk?" So this idea, which is kind of interesting, because like, what do you mean, how do they sit? How do they walk? Like, like walk this way or something like that. Like, is it like, do you have to step a certain way or sit a certain way? But it's really meaning like, how do they move through the world? How do they situate themselves in the world? How do they speak and engage and put out into the world? And I wanted to read the purport because I think it's very telling in relation to spiritual life. In a world where spirituality and guru and words are thrown out, and we don't take the time to assess what they mean, and sometimes we lack a certain discernment when we come into spiritual life, and our qualifiers for what it means to be spiritually advanced can be way off sometimes, because we're using material criteria to judge spiritual development. And so Srila Prabhupada writes, it's just a short paragraph, it's a paragraph. He says, as there are symptoms for each and every person in terms of their particular situation, similarly, one who is in Krishna consciousness has their particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. So there are symptoms of spiritual people. What are those symptoms? As a rich person has their symptoms at which they're known as a rich person, as a diseased person has their symptoms at which they're known as disease, as a learned person has their symptoms, so someone in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know the specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the section, the whole part of the Gita that's coming to this point, that Krishna is talking about the nature of the soul, and one who lives in spiritual consciousness, and one who's not affected by material circumstances or rises above them, and one who lives from the place of the soul. And Arjuna's like, what does that look like? Like, how do I recognize that? Like, I know what it's like when someone's rich. I can say that by just like how they live. I know what it's like for someone to be diseased. Like, I can look and I can see that someone's not feeling well. I know what it's like for someone to be really intelligent by the way that they speak and the way they explain things. Like, I can see all of that. Like, how do I look and see if someone is like merged in transcendental consciousness, if somebody is living from a place of the soul? And so that's this answer here in this segue, this next section. Purport continues. Most important is how the person in Krishna consciousness speaks. For speech is the most important quality of anyone. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as they do not speak. That's why they're always trying to get me to speak less, and they're always wondering why I'm the leadoff person on this podcast. They're just like, please stop, just stop it. But I can't help it. It's my nature, as Prabhupada says. And certainly a well-dressed fool, I'm not always well-dressed, but a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless they speak, which is so interesting because Prabhupada talks about the nature of dress, because people can dress a certain way. Being spiritual does not mean looking the part. It means acting the part, speaking the part. So Prabhupada says a well-dressed fool cannot be identified until they speak, but as soon as they speak, they reveal themselves at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious person is that they speak only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. So this idea of not judging a book by its cover in spiritual life, but paying attention to the way someone speaks, the way they treat each other, the way that I interact and treat each other, the way I react to the way people speak to me, and using that as a metric, our character, our interaction, our speech. And Prabhupada, we know Gita later on talks about the austerities of speech, and that it's not just speaking the truth because the truth hurts, but what's beneficial, what's compassionate, and also true, and based on spiritual literature. And so I just wanted to highlight this section because it's really, really beautiful, and it gives us an insight of how to identify spiritual people and on their level, and how to also gauge ourselves rather than just like external things of looking a certain way, having a spiritual name, having a great voice, etc. But it's something much deeper. And that's all I got.
I agree. Here.
We got one vote. Kishore, what's your vote? Otherwise, we're gonna you're the tiebreaker.
I also agree. Here. And I
Okay.
think just to elaborate on that point, in the next verse, Krishna kind of starts the answer and he gives like the general symptoms. And I was mentioning this a little bit. I'll just read it, just the verse very quickly. It says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, another name for Arjuna, when a person gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, I love that word, and when their mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then they are said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. And just as like the first general answer to the question that Arjuna is asking, I think this has a lot to do with what you're speaking about, Dayal, because it's like we get so attached to like what being spiritual looks like and how we're supposed to be. And it's like, oh, okay, I put on the tilak or the bindi and I put on the dhoti or the sari and like poof, I'm spiritual. I did it, and even like, oh, I went to India, or I go to India, therefore I'm spiritual, or I go to whatever it is. And Krishna is giving like a really clear demarcator here. It's like, actually, that person who is in transcendence, or that person who is enlightened, is someone who is finding complete satisfaction in the soul, which is like, that's such a high bar, it's like, and this concept is spoken about so much in the Bhagavatam, yayatma suprasidati, of like, how do I find that pure satisfaction in the soul? That means that I'm not attached to how things are going to go or not go. I'm not attached to the dress or not dress. I'm not attached to my semblance of control over things. Just going back to that story with the deities in India, it was such a learning lesson for me, because it was, the simple lesson was just like, I'm not in control. I'm not in control, and I'm not going to get to see God on my time, when I want, when I think it's good for me. He's going to surprise me. It's a mystery, and either I give myself to the mystery and find satisfaction in that kind of play, like playtime with God, or I'm like really rigid and just like, no, it has to go my way, it has to be this way, it has to be on my time, and if it's not on my time, then I'm just going to be upset and depressed about it. And so Krishna was just like, no, dude, like, I've got to watch, I'm on the altar, I'm keeping time, I'm gonna show myself to you when I want to. And it was just such a wonderful lesson that I need to continue learning, because that's, I feel like, how Krishna, in so many, I'm sure we all have little stories like this, but Krishna really shows us, it's like, hey, like he's saying here in this beautiful verse, it's like, we're giving up that, all these, I love that word, mental concoction, all these thoughts that like, I think I'm going to control things through thoughts, or I think I'm going to figure things out through thoughts. And we were talking about this last week, Achyuta, about kind of the inconceivability of God, and how like when we try to logic our way or think our way into like spiritual solutions, it's just, this is not going to work. And Christian is talking about it really clearly here. It's like this mental concoction of just like, yeah, if A plus B equals, you know, this, then boom, I'm spiritual. And it's like, no, it's something much deeper than that. It's that satisfaction with the soul, self-satisfaction, and it's such a personal journey for each and every person.
I think it's so interesting that Doyle, you were talking about even, and everyone was kind of saying it's not just like I wake up, I put on the uniform, and voila, I'm a spiritually minded devotee. And interestingly enough, I think that Kishore and I and others, we've been kind of talking about like a rough time that some of us had in specifically in Vrindavan. Some of us, we went to Radharaman Temple, and it's like me and three other people, including one retreat goer. We all got like inappropriately touched. Not the same person, different people. All at the same kind of time frame because we were all there together, but different people. And in my case, I turned around and the guy had like full dhoti, kurta, everything, whatever. I think I saw him later walking with like his family, and people are asking me like the one of the biggest questions that I got was, how do you reconcile that? Like you go to a spiritual place, you see this person, because I kind of wrote about it on social media, and I was like, I turned around, this person had on full tilak, spiritual clothes, everything. They, for all intents and purposes, look like a devotee. And they were saying, oh, this is a good lesson to you, that not every devotee looking person is a devotee, which is one really really bad comforting advice to give to somebody. Like that's not the way you comfort someone. But
Thank you for
second of
letting me
all,
know that people are trying to cheat me.
right, but second of all, I didn't mention it because I was surprised. I actually, like, people were like, oh, how do you reconcile that? And I've realized that I reconciled it in the way that I didn't expect better from some people. I didn't go in with the expectation that this wouldn't happen. I went in knowing that I'm in a certain body, and it wasn't the first time that something like that had happened in my experience. And I went in with it knowing that it probably wouldn't be the last time that something like this would happen. And so maybe it's to do with my my chart or whatever, which my chart was just saying, it's like, you're really interesting at handling trauma, your trauma and other people's trauma. It's like the trauma doesn't always surprise you. And I was like, that's true. And I just realized that I wasn't expecting differently. The reason I put it out there was because other people should also know that, yeah, this could happen. No, it doesn't mean that God hates you. And it actually doesn't have any bearing on the spiritual aspects of a place, of even an organization. And then a lot of people are like, oh, but what are they going to do? How are they going to handle it? I'm like, the temple might never. Because how do you govern thousands of people that come through those doors every hour? It's like impossible. And I might jokingly say, I'm in talks with God about it, and we have a little bit of beef now, me and Radharaman. I'm like, until he fixes it, I'm gonna figure out what's gonna happen. But really, the truth is, I know that it's not Krishna's fault. And I know that it's actually the nature of this place. And so when you were saying that Radhanath Maharaj says that, it's actually the most optimistic thing when you are expecting obstacles, I heard that in a lecture from him a long time ago, and I was like, that's an interesting thing. And it's not like pessimistically everything is gonna go wrong, but I didn't expect better from certain people. I don't expect the rickshawalas in India just to give me the lowest price because we're in Vrindavan. I expect them to do what they do. It's like you look at the monkeys and you expect the monkeys to be rascal monkeys because they're monkeys. You expect the rickshawalas to give you their starting price and then you talk them down or find another one because that's what they're going to do. You expect the shop owners to give you their starting price and then you talk them down or you figure it out, and that's what happens. And I don't necessarily hold it against them because everybody is doing what they've been taught to do, but this material world is also doing what it's been created to do, which is to tug on our heartstrings until we feel dissatisfied enough to go back home.
Thank you, Chuta. It's very, very powerful and piercing. And I feel like I want to dive into that more and ask questions, but we're out of time. We've run into time. And so I'm gonna ask Kimberly to give us a few takeaways and then we'll have some closing words. We're gonna hold on to what you shared and see if maybe that takes us into tomorrow when we continue our discussion about the qualities of a person in spiritual consciousness. So Kimberly, what you got for us?
It's optimistic to expect obstacles, find enjoyment in God's mystery, and being spiritual means acting and speaking the part and finding self-satisfaction in the soul.
Mm, thank you so much, Kimberly. Any other takeaways we got? Put them in the chat. And Kishore and Achuta, any closing words?
I'm going to close with the words of Baldevi because I really love what she wrote. Baldevi says, we, capital letters, do have free will and can exercise it to be wise or godly, or to be self-pleasing and exploitative, not godly. So blaming Krishna for such a moment is to not put responsibility on the correct party. I really, really love that. And I'm walking away with that because I think myself included have a tendency when things are not going my way, when something bad happens in my life, when there's some sort of reversal, it's very easy to just say, Krishna, why are you doing this to me? You know, like Krishna, oh, why Krishna? Now I'm going to have words with you, and I don't know about us anymore. And so I really love Baldevi's comment because, yeah, she's even writing more. Baldevi's got all, Krishna is not my scapegoat. I love that. That should be on a shirt somewhere. So I'm walking away with that. Krishna is not my scapegoat.
I think I've taken these days to like really chalking things up, like she said, putting the responsibility where it belongs. And so sometimes I'll just have a day and I'm like, oh, these bodies. And sometimes my family members are like, what, what about them? And I'm like, yeah, what about them this day? Yes, at any given moment, at any given time, like, oh, these bodies, man, they're doing stuff. Like everybody's doing stuff. And it helps me find some levity uh, in this situation to realize that, okay, I'm in a body and we're all in these bodies and we're all doing things, and but there's hope. We can get out of this cycle. We don't have to simply stay in the rut. We can get out. And Bhagavad Gita absolutely has a step-by-step formula.
I appreciate that. Krishna's not my scapegoat. I'm just going to turn that on myself and how I take responsibility for my own actions in life. And yeah, and so I appreciate that for you and for all of us. Thank you so much, Baldevi. We can ask Krishna what any moment event means. You know, what did he intend? And he will tell you eventually. Thank you for that. We love you guys. We appreciate all of you. Please, please, please be well. Continue to be well. We love you. We look forward to seeing you again, same time, same place. And again, please write to us at info@bhakticenter.org. Tell us your thoughts, your experiences, your questions. We love to be in touch. Take care. Bye bye.